Welcome to Celestial Zodiac, your home for clear and grounded astrology. In this video, we're going beyond what a Saturn return is and looking at what it actually feels like to go through one. Because this isn't just a cycle of external events. It's a period of deep personal change that can affect nearly every area of your life. For many people, this is when things start to shift in very real ways. Career changes, relationship turning points, health wake-up calls, and a growing sense that something about your life isn't working anymore. Can feel intense, confusing, and sometimes even isolating. But underneath all of that, there's a deeper process happening. Saturn returns are about identity, who you are, what you stand for, and whether your life reflects that. So if you've been feeling like you're outgrowing parts of your life or being pushed to change, this may explain why. A Saturn return isn't just about external changes. It's about a deeper shift in who you are and how you define yourself. This is often a period where major life themes begin to surface, especially in areas like career, relationships, health, and personal identity. Career restructuring is one of the most common experiences. You may realize that the path you've been on no longer fits, or that it was built on expectations rather than genuine alignment. This can lead to job changes, increased responsibility, or a complete shift in direction. For example, someone might spend years working toward a career that seemed like the right choice. Something stable, respectable, or expected by family. But during their Saturn return, they start to feel increasingly disconnected from it. They may dread going to work, feel unfulfilled despite doing well, or question why they chose this path in the first place. At that point, they might either take on more responsibility to make it meaningful, shift roles within the same field, or decide to leave entirely and pursue something that actually aligns with who they are. At the same time, relationships often come into focus. Some may deepen into long-term commitment, while others may come to an end if they're no longer stable or aligned with who you're becoming. For example, someone might be in a long-term relationship that has felt comfortable for years, but during their Saturn return, they start to notice deeper issues they had been overlooking. Maybe they realize they've been compromising too much, avoiding difficult conversations, or staying because it feels safe rather than truly fulfilling. At that point, the relationship either shifts into something more serious, like moving in together or committing long-term with clearer boundaries, or it begins to break down because it can't support who they're becoming. What once felt good enough no longer feels sustainable, and a decision has to be made. Health and burnout can also become impossible to ignore during this time. If you've been pushing yourself too hard or neglecting your well-being, your body may force you to slow down and reassess your habits. For example, someone might be working long hours, constantly stressed, and running on very little sleep, telling themselves they'll rest later. During their Saturn return, that approach often stops working. They might start experiencing constant fatigue, anxiety, headaches, or even get sick more often. At that point, they can't just push through anymore. Their body forces them to slow down. They may have to change their routine, set better boundaries around work, and finally prioritize rest and health in a way they hadn't before. Authority issues can surface as well, whether with bosses, parents, or larger systems, especially if you've been operating within structures that don't truly support you. This can bring up questions about control, responsibility, and where you need to take ownership of your life. It's also common to experience periods of loneliness or isolation. As you outgrow certain people, environments, or ways of thinking, there can be a sense of separation from what once felt familiar. This can feel uncomfortable, but it often creates space for more meaningful connections and a stronger sense of self. One of the biggest shifts during a Saturn return is the loss of old identities. Roles, labels, or versions of yourself that no longer fit may begin to fall away. This process can feel uncertain, but it's also where real growth happens. You're being asked to define yourself more clearly, based on who you actually are rather than who you thought you were supposed to be. As this unfolds, there's often a gradual move away from seeking external validation. Approval from others becomes less important than living in a way that feels honest and aligned. Choosing authenticity over approval becomes a central theme, even if it means making difficult decisions. By the end of this process, the version of you that emerges is often more grounded, self-defined, and aligned with reality. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming more fully who you are. The loss of identity during a Saturn return does change depending on which return you're going through. While the core theme is the same, letting go of what no longer fits, the level of identity being challenged evolves over time. During the first Saturn return, the identity shift is often about stepping into adulthood. This is where you begin to question the version of yourself that was shaped by family, society, or early expectations. You may realize that the path you chose in your early 20s, career, relationships, lifestyle, doesn't actually reflect who you are. The identity being released here is often based on who you thought you should be, rather than who you truly are. During the second Saturn return, the identity shift goes deeper. At this stage, it's less about becoming and more about evaluating what you've built. You may look at your career, relationships, and life structure and ask whether it genuinely reflects you or if parts of it were shaped by obligation or habit. The identity being released here is often tied to roles you've held for decades: professional identity, family roles, or long-standing patterns. By the third Saturn return, the identity shift becomes even more internal. It's less about external roles and more about meaning, perspective, and acceptance. There's often a natural letting go of attachments to labels, status, or expectations, and a movement towards simplicity and clarity. The identity being released here is often the need to define yourself through external structures at all. Saturn returns aren't just about what happens in your life. They're about who you become through it. Each return asks you to let go of what isn't real, what isn't aligned, and what no longer fits. And while that process can feel uncomfortable, uncertain, or even overwhelming at times, it's also what allows something more solid and authentic to take its place. These periods don't take anything from you that was truly meant to last. They refine, restructure, and realign your life so it reflects who you actually are, not who you thought you were supposed to be. So if you're going through a Saturn return and it feels like everything is shifting, it doesn't mean you're losing yourself. It means you're becoming more fully who you are. Thank you for watching Celestial Zodiac. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.